David King, welcome to the Monday means test for round one.
Morning, G. It's been a long time coming. And what a way to start. It had a bit of everything, didn't it? It was terrific the weekend and heard a bit of your work across the weekend. And I'm just in love with the fact that most teams are really bullish about what they've seen, whether you know you're going to have an average year or a poor year or whether you think you can win it. Everyone's pretty happy with what they've seen.
With a few notable exceptions, and we'll work through them in our means test. Every means test starts with the King's Gambit.
And right down the outside with a big run late, coming home hard, King's Gambit.
Just for a moment, I thought we were on the third. Sweated up badly in the mounting yard. Reminded me of you, actually, just before you're heading out to exercise. Three deep the trip.
I was sweating. Is it loomed up ready to win, Jared? I broke into a little bead or two myself.
Third in the Golden Slipper wasn't bad. What is your King's Gambit from round one?
Oh, something old, something new. We're talking about influence, influencing games, and I think we quickly go to the newbies, the ones that they're on the scene. She's all terrific, and Dacos and Horne-Francis and Rankin in that first half. Ryan Burns for St Kilda was very good. Tom Green for GWS. Goulden's all the rage at the moment, but I think we skim past the old Warriors that just play 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 every week. And, people get sick of you talking about Max Gawn and Jake Lever and Clayton Oliver, but they just front up every week and they're there to influence and swing games. I heard Bucks this morning about talking about Pendlebury. DeGoey, when he's there in a meaningful way. I did the game yesterday for Fox Footy, the GWS Giants and the Adelaide Crows. And that we'll get deeper into the game later, but they were challenged to in an injury sense very early in the piece, and they went back to Callum Ward to play midfield minutes. And you just know what you're going to get from Callum Ward. Stephen Coniglio was the reason they probably won the game, but Ward goes in there and plays pretty much 100% midfield minutes for a large chunk of that game. And Toby Green, there's not the raptures about Toby Green's game today because he just does it all the time. So I just wanted to give a little shout out to those aging old Warriors who just front up every week, and when the chips are down, they say, "Hey, come on, let's go." I'm in love with some of those older players that don't really. Sometimes it's death by a thousand cuts. It's not. It's very rarely the massive. Max had a big game on the weekend. Max is probably the outlier in all of that, but I think we've got to recognise, and everyone will be sitting there thinking, okay, if you listen to this conversation, who are the ones that really did it for our team, that are north of 30 or, played 250 plus games, and you just forget how good they are for your footy club sometimes. So I just want to give them a little shout out.
Yeah, the old and the new in perfect fusion across the weekend. All right, so we've got issues to deal with, the big issues, the big hits, the debate around the turf. There's the pressure index, there's preliminary final integrity, the curiosity, best bits, worst bits. But let's just revel in the best bits, shall we? And pick two, because the other best bits fall into other categories. So let's start with Collingwood.
Well, that was a performance, wasn't it? I think through the pre-season, most people have said, they won 9 of their 10 games decided by under 10 points, and that won't happen next year. And then you go down to training, you talk to Craig McRae, and you talk to the coaches, and you say, well, what do you say to that? What do you say to that? You won 9 of 10. He said, well, the honest truth is, if you go back and watch those games, we should have won 5 of those games by 30 points. So you're not even having that discussion. So we left goals on the table. So, could we have lost 1 or 2 of them? Absolutely. Could we have lost all 9 of them? Absolutely. But we should have banked those games. So there's always an optimistic and a pessimistic view on the same stat or the same method of play. But the way they play, okay, they're giving up to get a bit. They're prepared to run and gun. They're prepared to excite. They're prepared to play a different way. And I think Craig McRae right now is the modern-day Malcolm Blight. That if you kick 100, we'll kick 110. If you kick 110, we'll kick 120, and so on and so forth. They're prepared to give up some meaningless footy. They're not there to win every contest. They're going to be an outlier in all the stats through the course of the year. They are. They're going to be a real tough one to track because the way they play is so damaging and so punishing with minimal touches, high corridor, high impact, and that's why you look at their kicking skills. The two Dacos boys, De Goey, Pendlebury, Crisp, all those guys through the midfield, their kicking efficiency is off the charts because they're getting time and space and they're in corridor. So they've got all options available to them, all space to kick into, numbers breaking everywhere through the corridor. I mean, it's a hard thing to sell on radio, and you'll get a deeper and deeper look at it over the next few weeks as we go in a television sense or a game day sense. But in your mind's eye, just picture that Collingwood allow their individual opponents to own boundary side, and they stay corridor side. So you get a chance. You get a chance to win the ball if you're Geelong on the weekend and stay boundary side. And they trust their back six to win it back. And if they need to slide defensively, they do. But if they win the ball back, Collingwood, at any point in that possession chain, they are in corridor and they've got friends. So that ball just needs to be flung back into the corridor ad hoc. It just needs to get back in there and they are gone. And that's why it's going to be so difficult for teams to clamp this. So to defeat this, you've got to give up so much of what you actually are and how you want to play. So I'm in awe of what they've been able to do in a short space of time in let's call it 18 months, 2 pre-seasons. McRae, Lepic, these sorts of guys, they're seriously intelligent football people, and I'm on board. I'm not 1A because there was a few on there before me. The rusted on Collingwood fans, and they've let me know over the weekend. But I'm right there. I think that they've got the positivity of this football club and a method of play that encourages all to get involved. That I'm right on board. And if they can maintain their health through the course of the year, and that's everyone's challenge, they're there to win it, Jared. Did you love what you saw?
Loved it. So all you wanted to see was will they improve? Yep. So Brad Johnson had the Dacos boys as the best and second best players on the ground.
Yeah.
What they brought in. So I think I would put this in the Horne-Francis category as well as the Mitchell category. So both ends of the spectrum. There is a tendency to overlook players because of other things. So there'd been a tendency to run down Tom Mitchell, but all they need him to do is that. That's going to work. Bobby Hill's going to work up front in probably a better system than he's played in before. Is that I just felt like that was everything I needed to know. It sort of makes a folly of all the preseason guessing. Just give me some evidence at the start so we can have a look at it and go, yep, they're going to be a better side this year than they were last year.
And I get a lot of feedback about talking about preseasons, and Thanasi's going with it again, that all clubs gloss it up during preseason. They don't. I can tell you 5 clubs that I wasn't overly enthusiastic about after what I'd seen, but I'm not going to come on here and say, they've had a bad January. I mean, that's just ridiculous. So we wait and see whether that flows into the season proper. And if it does, then we've got a body of work to talk about. So Collingwood have been one of the – we've talked about them. They're one of the high-level training outfits that we've seen through the preseason. Every session is in order. They roll from drill to drill. Everyone knows exactly what's required. They don't dwell on mistakes at training. They encourage mistakes. They encourage people to explore, their levels. I mean, they're a bit like they say, go for that kick, because if you work out you can't hit that kick, well, that's out of your repertoire. That's gone. But if you can hit that kick, we need you to hit that kick. So Nick Dacos, hey, don't hold back on picking off that one through the corridor, because if you hit this, we score. It's like the Jeremy Cameron discussion of last year. Like, he could play safe, Jeremy, but they want him to freewheel. Don't load him with information. Let's let him pick off the tough one through the corridor, because that'll get to Hawkins in a heartbeat. So it's more than just a mode of play. It's creating an environment that fuels itself, and that's what's happening at Collingwood. If you're late to the party, they've got standards there that you have to adhere to, and if you adhere to those, we'll come with you in a positive sense. We'll get the best out of you, and you may not even be in the selected 22. But when you come in, this is what you've got to do. I love what they've done with this football club, and I think this is the start of a new era for the Pies.
And then there's the Giants, and this has just come through. We'll look back at that GWS win as the making of a new era at the club, guts and determination.
Unreal, wasn't it? They were challenged. So 5 minutes into the game, they lost Harry Perriman. And then halfway through the third quarter, they lost Lockie Whitfield. Then they lost Josh Kelly. And Whitfield was influencing the game. They were in all sorts. They were 31 points down 20 minutes into the second quarter. It should have been 50 points. The game should have been over. But the door was ajar. And Toby Green said, hey, boys, can we just start winning some ball? I've got it covered forward of centre. And he was out of tickets for the last 40. It must have been 40 degrees up there.
Yeah.
And then Callum Ward went crazy. Stephen Cornelio wound the clock back, and some of his breakaway speed from centre bounce clearance in particular was awesome to see. And then they found a way, and winning's a grind. You don't win games in 5 minutes. It's generally a grind. And to see them just, will themselves over the line, and the coach would have been so proud. You get into the rooms. We have the privilege at Fox doing the game. We can. The cameras are still rolling in the rooms after the game, and they have a great environment up there where they have all the families come in at the Giants game. You see every family member in the rooms after the game. And there was Adam Kennedy talking to I think it was his parents, or say it was his parents. And he said, you know what, I'll come on as a sub. He said, I thought I was going to be the first sub to come off with cramp. I was going to have to be subbed as the sub.
Yep.
So things like that. I just think that Adam Kingsley get in there today and say, guys, we can achieve anything. If we really want it badly enough, down on manpower, there was every reason why we should have lost that game, but we found a way. So it was a big win. It was a big win in terms of setting culture and just for the leaders of the footy club to say, hey, we've got control here, so the young blokes can just do what they need to do.
And Toby Green sort of gave the context to that, didn't he, straight afterwards?
Definitely the hardest win I've ever had. That was the hardest game of footy I've ever played, hands down. Good effort. I don't know, we had 7 or 8 cramping bad in this last quarter. Just to find a way, it's a pretty special win.
It was a special win. He was out of tickets even doing the interview, Jared.
Yes.
So there's a lot to like, and it's great for a new coach. First game to find a way to win like that. It just shows that he's got the group. They were really poor early. Let's put that on the table. They didn't turn up to pressure at all. They didn't turn up to play when the Adelaide Crows were engaged and moving the ball, but they just missed too many shots at goal. So once they got rolling in terms of winning clearance, and the text's right, Tom Green was enormous. But the real man who did the real damage was Stephen Cornelio, who's been through the ringer over the last 2 or 3 years. So congrats to him.
Do you want to put a name to who Adam Simpson should drop?
A name. Well, it has to have some cachet in the group, doesn't it? Well, would Andrew Gaff be absolutely safe?
No.
There was
Not
some
the way he
awful,
kicked the ball.
Yeah, awful decisions and some execution on the weekend. If you're going to be an outside player, you've got to bring the leg. You've got to have that left leg operational. And I'm not saying it's you drop him for life and he's done, he's gone, but you've got to shake the group. They need someone of note, I think. The Todd Goldstein effect at the Kangaroos. Everyone was on notice round 1. So there's no other way. You've got to take football off a star to shake the group.
The big issue out of the weekend are the 3 big hits, and it comes against the backdrop where last week multiple lawsuits were filed on the concussion front. Read Max Rook's piece on Saturday, read Gary Ablett Sr.'s piece on Sunday. So that's the backdrop to what's happening. So how do you change behaviour, and then how do you punish what happens? Cosy Pickett on Bailey Smith 2 weeks, Lance Franklin on Sam Collins 1 week, and Shane McAdam on Jacob Ware to come later today. It was disconcerting that there were 3 in the first weekend. It was a bit tone deaf from all of those players.
Well, that's my question. Is it tone deaf, or is it just the fact that there's no real deterrent? So you miss a week. So you Lance Franklin and you miss 1 week of footy against the Hawks. Like, seriously, is that a gee? I'll make sure I never do that again.
So I think the suspension is jarring. It's a long time since Franklin's been suspended. He's had a whole lot of marginal incidents that he's been on the right side of.
Yeah, but
so any suspension does serve a purpose.
No, I disagree. But 1 week, nah, not for me. I mean, you're going past the football to make contact with your opponent's head. That's what he's done. This guy can thread the eye of a needle. He knows where the drop of ball is going to be. He knows where to place his body. And the only time he has no idea what he's doing is when he nails someone with an elbow in the head, with a clear tuck of the left arm into his side to make perfect contact with the head. I don't wear that. And I think that's absolutely intentional. Take Lance's name out of it, right? That action to go past the footy and execute a bump to the head is a starting point of 2 weeks. If you knock the player out, it's elevated from there. I just can't accept how we're still saying that's a 1 week suspension. I can't have that. And then the other two are rugby league type hits. They are set and drive and drill. They've got no idea what the outcome of those hits are going to be at the start of their move. So their decision is not whether they're concussed or whether they're broken a jaw or whether they've even missed the head. Their decision at the start of that move is to nail the opposition player in the head. So how the hell are we at 2 weeks if we're saying, we're going to do everything we can to protect the head? The head is sacrosanct. You wouldn't want to go past the footy. You wouldn't want to make incidental. You wouldn't even want a whiplash effect. We've gone nowhere with this, and I am sick of talking about it. We've done this discussion every 8 weeks last year, and we've got two absolutely driving blows to the head.
So if there wasn't a matrix, what's the Pickett suspension for you?
The Pickett suspension for that action starts at 3 and elevates as to the damage afterwards. It only elevates after you've decided that the action's 3. The other one's just as bad. McAdams starts at 3 because we've absolutely got to stamp it out. It's nothing to do with the person. It's nothing to do with whether they're good blokes or good players or any of that stuff. So I don't care that he's a good small forward in the comp. I don't care. That action is the reason we've got post-football trauma everywhere. There's 200 players involved in these cases, Jared, and some of them are not
60
being
in the other one, and then one and one.
It's never ending. So unless we come up with a separate table, the head trauma situation shouldn't be on the matrix. Shouldn't be part of it. I don't know whether Michael Christian decides that he'll stay in the matrix and he'll lessen everything. How can you...
So in fairness to Michael, within the matrix, he's elevated Pickett. So Pickett has become high impact, whereas there's no impact on Smith. That would typically be, at face value, it's either low or medium. So he has elevated it on the potential to cause damage, and well he should have done to get it to 2 in the matrix that's there. So he hasn't played this down. He's lifted it up. There's a separate issue I want to debate in a minute in there that I think
he hasn't done that.
No, he hasn't done that. He's taken that
why
one at
hasn't he
face
done
value.
that with the Franklin one? Why hasn't he, when you run past the ball and effectively bump a player to the head, that was clearly the only outcome that was going to happen? Lance knew what he was doing. So I don't wear that he... I think that Michael picks and chooses with this, and I'm not going to have a go at him. I'm not. I'm going to leave him out of it, right? Because it serves no purpose. But you can't use one for one and not the other. They're all 3 of these cases are intentional hits to the head.
So that the intentional part of it is the problem in the way that he has consistently applied with the bump. There are no intentional bumps in the way that he has applied the laws. I've debated this with him in the old MRP in the room. And so Pickett's action can't result in anything other than a reportable offence. Whereas he would use the legal definition to say that he didn't set out to commit a reportable offence. He has carelessly executed that. Well, I don't think that's right, and I think these scenarios suffer for the fact that there are no intentional bumps. You can have an intentional punch, you should be able to have an intentional bump on the scale of the way the bumps work.
So just explain to me how they're not intentional bumps when you set your feet and you're almost horizontal reaching for contact to the head.
Yes, well, so it is inevitable in that action that you are going to commit a reportable offence. That's what I think. As soon as you run past the ball, it is inevitable that you are going to... And so that's an intentional decision that you made. But it's never been applied in that way, so it is consistent through the years. And I've disagreed with it the whole way through. And then you get to these moments and you go, so the only way this can go any further is if you're prepared to grade these bumps intentional. There should be the capacity to have intentional bumps and careless bumps, but we only have careless bumps.
See, this is where I disagree with you. Like, if you are seeking contact with the head, which is what both of these bumps have done, you're looking for maximum trauma, right? Whether it's shoulder, chest, head, whatever. Okay, that's how they're entering these bumps, and then they make contact with the head. So the fact that they make contact with their head is the small margin that we need to just take off the table. If there's a risk of this bump being so aggressive and so out of control, you can't tell me where you're going to hit him as you enter your bump, then you waive your rights for the laws to look after you.
Yeah.
You've hit the head and you've come in with absolute aggression and an intent to cause maximum trauma. That's what we've got to take out of our game.
Yeah. So I would like to see Pickett be charged with intentional, and then it's his right to go to the tribunal and convince the panel that it was actually careless. Now, I don't think you couldn't make that case. His actions were absolutely deliberate. They were thought through and executed in precisely the way that he meant to. So make him go and defend it rather than bump then apply it just as careless the whole way through.
Yeah, and people get sick of this discussion because they say, "Oh, that's our game," and it was our game.
That's not our game.
It was our game in the 80s and 90s, but it's not. It's no longer part of what we accept as sport now. You've got to provide a level of safety for the opposing player who all he's doing is disposing of the footy or going after the ball. He needs to be protected. So I don't wear the outcome being what's the answer. The outcome can't be the answer. It's the action that needs to be suspended.
Yeah, but I will say the action has been suspended, just not to the level that you think would act it as a deterrent.
No,
Because there's no impact on Bailey Smith.
there's no impact. But that's absolute fluke.
No,
Jerry.
that's right. But that means that level of suspension has been set in this instance. So Cozzy starts at 2, and if Bailey Smith ends up off on a stretcher, then we are talking 4, 5, 6 weeks. So I think that part of it has to be acknowledged. It's not a strong enough deterrent in your view, but it has started as a suspension when there was actually no consequence to Smith.
Yeah, well, maybe we can agree to disagree on that. I don't think 2 weeks is ever makes the player sit down and say, "Oh, I'll never do that again." I don't think 1 week, absolutely 1 week doesn't do it. Lance Franklin missing 1 week against Hawthorn this week makes absolutely zero difference to his behaviour, and he's been walking a fine line for years.
Yes.
And he's been allowed to get away with this, and he's been allowed to get away with that. There's been not one deterrent for Lance Franklin for 10 years. So you get what you reap what you sow, and that's the problem here, Jared. And people get sick of talking about it. But when I hear the stories of Justin Clark and these guys getting in their car to drive to uni where they'd been for the previous 4 years and saying, "I don't know actually where uni is," that to me, I can't accept that for young men. So do something about it, or stop the carry on, the grandstanding that you're protecting the head, because you're not.
No one wants to criticise the MCG because it's our sacred home here in Melbourne. But there was a bit of pretending going on that everything was going to be fine and that it played okay. It looked precisely like the ground that the Super Bowl was played on in Phoenix, which was a bit jarring when you were watching it, and it undermined the players in the game.
All I want, Jared, is the players and the clubs and the teams to put on the best show they can put on, and to see them at their absolute maximum optimal performance. And that I was worried about that last week. That's the only reason we had the discussion. No, I'm not here to bash the MCG. I love the MCG, but it was never going to be its best version. 13 days out, we're laying new soil, and I'm no soil expert. I'm no grass expert, and that's been pointed out to me multiple times. And curators hate you talking about their patch, and that's fine. But ask the players what they think before you tell them what it's like. Let's just listen to people.
Yeah, the ones who are senior enough and confident enough to say so. So I won't be the only one who that you could get. Players will text you what they experienced, but not many are prepared to say it publicly because no one wants to criticise the MCG. But those two players were, and they laid it out pretty clearly. So the science and the reports are one thing, but these are the players who are running across it. This was the actual experience of playing the game.
So what would they have made out of the
So
concerts?
this is the interesting part because this is more than footy. So the Ed Sheeran concerts drew 218,000 people across 2 nights. Landmark nights in Melbourne life, I think, worth tens of millions of dollars to the economy, to Events Victoria, to I think really important events that they are staged. And the MCG was showcased in a way that it hadn't been showcased for a long time. I've never seen it better for a concert event than it was. So in a way, footy just has to find its place in behind that. So you don't get to call every shot. It's important for Victorian life that these concerts were held in the biggest possible stadium and they brought joy around the country to so many people. Harry Styles and Ed Sheeran, these are major events. And then the footy just has to find its way in behind that. Now, the trouble is it costs a key player a chunk of his season in the aftermath. But yeah, I think you do have to marry the two up. Footy doesn't dictate everything in life, and the MCG should be utilised in the way that it was.
What it tells you, Jared, in the short term, is that there's always a number where you're prepared to sacrifice something. And they were prepared to run the risk of the MCG not being at its absolute best for a number. That's the short story.
No, I don't agree with that because I don't think the MCC they didn't get the lion's share of the cut out of it. This was a statewide decision, not just an MCC.
So when
decision.
the AFL went to the MCG,
so the AFL brought the season forward by a week, which
yep.
tightened the timelines considerably
That's
because
my
I think
point.
7 days makes a really big difference.
They should
But
have
this
kicked
is not
back.
about the MCC or the AFL.
They should have kicked back and said the venue will not be ready for round 1. If you want to do that, alarm bells everywhere. Take the season the other way. Go backwards a week instead of forwards a week because we cannot guarantee that the G will be at its absolute best. They didn't do that.
You'd have to know what those conversations were.
Well, you
behind
would,
closed
but
doors.
logic says that's where they've ended up. So there has to be an agreement there somewhere. I don't accept that you can risk in any way, shape, or form. What are we talking? We're talking 40 players a game, 160 players in round 1. I don't accept that. So we can just sit here and look at each other, Jerry. But I think that they made a huge mistake, and are we going to carry on too much about it? No, we're not. But my short answer for me is there's a number where you're prepared to sacrifice things or risk things. And that's my outcome of it. It's not a massive problem, but they could have easily gone back the other way and said, we want to have this event for Victoria. So we're moving everything back a week and we're adding the extra round or however we're doing it. But I just think they made a blue all ends up. I don't know who's responsible for the mistake, who carries the can for it, but I know that it's on the back of some dollars.
Straight to the pressure index for Justin Longmuir and his Fremantle Dockers, who managed only 7 goals against a desperately undermanned opponent.
Daniel Hoyne and I have been looking at what's real and what's fake footy for 2 years and trying to work out why defensive numbers, the absolute what you concede, okay, we concede on average 65 points a game. Is that a real number? Or is that fake? Are you controlling the ball so it's not in free play, it's not in live play for so long that all you do is defend your numbers? You don't experience absolute defence because your back six never under pressure. You get to a finals campaign and you lose the handle of the game for 5 minutes. All of a sudden, your back six are under pressure. They either pass or fail. Every team that's gone into a final series for the last 5 years has failed with this fake footy model. So Fremantle know this because halfway through last year, they said, hang on, do we think this is going to win? We're going to make some tweaks. We're not scoring enough. The back half of the year, they fell apart because they couldn't defend. They've started this year with the same model. 136 marks. It's fake footy. It ain't going to work. Now, it'll win you some games along the way, some home and away games, but it's a waste of time because I can guarantee you in September you will get blown away. It might not be by the first final because it'll be 5th versus 8th, 6th versus 7th, but against the big boys at the top of the tree, you got no hope. We've seen what Geelong are doing, what Collingwood are doing, what Richmond are doing, what Port Adelaide are doing, what Brisbane are going to get back to. We know what they're going to do. So I think this is just a con. It is a false model. They had 77 chances of moving the ball from the defensive half for 2 goals. That's and I'm not going to go too hard at that because that can be a round one issue and that can correct as we work through. But what I am going to go hard on is the handling of Nathan Fyfe. So during the off-season, you take the captaincy off him and you tell him he's no longer going to be a prime midfielder where he's plied his trade for a dozen years and been the best in the competition at ball winning. Now, there's things he can't do, and there's things that are in his game that are never going to change. He's not great defensively, and he's not an awesome kick. So your decision of coach to put him forward and not put him in the centre bounce at all, when that game was screaming out for a change yesterday, when the game needed an action, they stuck fat with Brayshaw, Sarong, O'Meara, and these guys for no result. St Kilda kicked the last 5 goals, and Fyfe was stuck forward. Now, he's not a forward anyway. We all, the whole world knows he's not a forward, but there'll be a game where he kicks 4 goals, and they go, oh, no, he is a forward. See, that's in that game. If he was at Richmond, if Nathan Fyfe was at Richmond, he would go in and take centre bounces because he is a centre bounce beast. He's a big frame. He's exactly what every team are trying to find. And then he would roll forward. He wouldn't have to defend like Dustin Martin doesn't defend. Okay, we'll tailor the role for you. We want to get the best out of you, Dustin. How do we do that? Why isn't Justin Longmuir getting the best out of Nathan Fyfe? Why would you have a prime asset and him, forget his birth certificate, why would you have him dying on the vine in the forward line? I don't understand it, and I'm going to keep watching it through the course of the season because you're putting this guy in a position where he can't be his best. You may want him to be something he's not, but all you're doing is showing that you don't trust him anymore. You're telling him he's no good. You're telling him we're putting this guy, Will Brodie in front of him. Now, if I was Nathan Fyfe, I'd have trouble walking into training today. Say, well, no, he doesn't trust me. What are we doing? Yep, I'll play forward for you. No worries. Even last year, he gets frustrated. He says, oh, I don't want to be playing forward all the time. I want to go on ball as well. And the coach says, hey, you'll play where I want you to play. So being the captain and being a long servant of the footy club, you toe the line. But at what point do you decide, hey, you know what, I need to enthuse this guy. I need him to still think he can be a reason why we win. I think it's really poor.
I heard you one Friday morning in the pre-season wondering out loud whether Fyfe was gettable somewhere else to go and play in the centre square.
Well, it's a bad relationship, isn't it? And Nathan will never, he's got too much class to say anything outside of, to create any controversy, and he's a great of our game. So why would you damage that? But if I was Collingwood, I'm starting the conversations a month ago, so 3 weeks ago. So come and be a reason you win a grand final over here. I know you can always go back to Western Australia and be the king of Western Australia, but come and there's a sell there, isn't there? There's a sell. It's not just Collingwood. There's 3 or 4 clubs that need a big-bodied midfielder on a short time frame, 1 year, 2 years. I think he's gettable. But the bottom line is, Fremantle have got massive issues with how they're playing. They need to change and change quickly before they slip too far behind the pack and finish 5th to 8th, 5th to 10th, and waste a season.
So that's a pressure index. What about PFI? This is the highest end measure that we use, and the high end measure applies to the Brisbane Lions losing like that in round 1.
Yeah, bad, isn't it? Well, the games that separate whether you finish in the top 4 are against those other teams that are fighting for top 4. So when you drop one on the road, it's not terminal by any stretch, but it's a kick in the guts when it looks like that. And Ken Hinkley made changes that I don't think Chris Fagan made. So I'm not having a go at Fags because it's tough to win on the road, and they've proven they're a very good side. But I'm concerned that their defensive model is out of whack with the competition at the pointy end. They stay one-on-one down back. They try and zone through the middle of the ground. It creates holes everywhere, and the ball goes. It's very difficult for a defender to beat a quality forward one-on-one these days, no matter who it is. Charlie Dixon, Marshall, Mackay, Curnow, name all the top-line forward. It's very difficult to put one magnet next to him and say, that'll be sorted. You need support. You need team defence. You need a third man. You need a Jake Lever coming across and diffusing. They're the sorts of defence that stand up in big games. The team defence and the support defence, they don't have that. So this is a big shift. They haven't got Marcus Adams there anymore. So there's a risk on one of those key posts anyway. So they need to find a way to consistently free up Harris Andrews, not have him on the best player. So I think that they'd be scratching their heads this morning saying, okay, gee, have we made some structural problems here for ourselves? And the fix is a slow burn. Might be an eight week resolution.
So what they got right is the flip side of the pressure index and PFI. So what they got right, Ross Lyon?
Oh, they got right getting Ross Lyon. That's the bottom line, Jared, is that what he was able to do with minimum chips was just unbelievable on the weekend. What's our asset? We can run. Okay, guys, we're going to be charging back to help the back six that's undermanned, and then we're going to try and manufacture a way to score. So when the ball goes in our forward line, give it some air. And I know you're going to be some 5'6" fighting out of their weight range to get the ball to ground, but let's get it to ground and hunt. And then let the numbers arrive again. I know that they've got an injury list that's as long as your arm. How they have won that game is on just effort and heart from the playing group, but an unbelievable ability to motivate and set standards that every player is bought into. Now, I'm not sure every coach can do that.
And what they got right, Ken Hinkley?
Kenny being Kenny. Just Kenny being Kenny. I didn't think this group could do what they did on the weekend, but it's great to see there's another contender back into the mould. I didn't even have him in the 8. I thought this could have been a year that would spiral out of control after a really tough start for the first 4 to 5 weeks in terms of the fixture. But to see these young kids go crazy, it's all-consuming. You know, Horne-Francis doing what we hoped he'd do from minute 1, but it's taken a little bit longer. You know, Rosie, we already know about him. Ollie Wines looks back to his best. So the gaps around that can fill quite quickly. So I was rapt to see them play with real dare. Corridor is king at the moment, and Ken has wound the clock back. We saw him do this in 2014, and for some reason they've steered away from that absolute aggression. When they play with aggression, Dixon's a different player. So I love what they've done, and to be able to drag a game back that's sliding halfway through is the essence of why we love great coaches. Is he a great coach? I don't know if he's a great coach, but well done on the weekend.
Could be a powerful force now is Butters, Rosie, Dersma, Horne-Francis. It's your club now. There's a broader point here around your curiosity, key posts who don't compete perhaps with the ferocity that they might. Just give me the narrow point on the Bulldogs, and then we'll broaden out.
Well, the narrow point is that they've shifted their assets, if you like. They had a midfield that was the envy of the competition in terms of volume. So they lose Dunkley and they lose a wingman in Hunter. No one talks about losing the wingman, but it's a hard role to fill. Dunkley's a top liner. So now that's not a midfield that can win your games. It's the tools that are forward and back that you've invested in. You're still strong in the midfield, but you're probably more balanced as a team now. So my eyes go straight to that forward 50. 7 marks inside 50. Now, they're up against a Melbourne defence without Stephen May. So it was Lever that was going to be the difference in terms of intercepting, and you were hoping to try and get as many one-on-ones as you could against those lesser-ranked Melbourne defenders. So Aaron Norton, I love watching him play. He's just the ultimate competitor. They go to him 12 times. He takes 3 marks inside 50. Yes, he's got some warts with his kicking and all those sorts of things. But in terms of competitive spirit, A1. Rory Lobb And Jamara's a young kid, so I'm not going at Jamara, okay? He was targeted 5 times, took a couple of marks, dropped a couple he should have taken, and he's still on the journey. But Rory Lobb is there to be a finisher for this team. He's an add-on that's to come in and take them from 4th or 5th on the ladder to 1st or 2nd. He's not a work in progress. So I challenge him to get competitive. Get a little bit of nasty in your game. Now, nasty's not getting suspended. Nasty's bringing the ball to ground when it's 1v2. When it's you versus Petty, arms locked, bodies engaged, and levers coming back, you've got to find a way to get that ball to ground. Because if you don't, they can't win. You can't leave it all to Aaron Norton. And Sam Darcy is not even in this discussion. He's so young. He's not even in. We're not even talking about him. So when you kick the ball inside 50, there's no way that you should only take 7 marks and the opposition should mark your entry 12 times. So that's just a nonsense. If you're going to be tall, you got to expect that you're going to never be outmarked. You got to at worst bring it to ground. So my watch now for the next 4 weeks, is Rory Lobb. Now that's unfair because there's other players in the comp that are the same.
So this is the broader point, isn't it, around the non-competitive key post?
They kill you. They get you sacked, Jared. If they're not competitive and they're north of 6'5", what are they? So I put Mabior Chol on the list last night. So he kicked 40+ goals last year, but how he got them is not your standard key post sort of methods, not clunking marks. It's crumbing, it's snapping, it's all those things. Oh, that's fantastic for a forward to be able to do. Of course it is, but his primary function is to attack the footy in the air, not be outmarked, and take the odd contested mark as well as the odd uncontested mark. So I'm looking at the Suns with Joel Jeffrey and Mabior Chol, and I'm looking at Rory Lobb just for the next month. Come at the ball, play big, or get out of the way.
All right, so that's the curiosity. Melbourne are going to feature heavily in the seedings, so let's just roll them over. Just a little bit of what they got wrong. So, score review Adelaide Oval. This is, I know it didn't have any impact.
Another one. What happened?
The definitive angle came after the review had been completed.
That's right.
So it was a bit hard to tell whether it hit his boot or not. The goal umpire said he thought it had. The replay suggested that it hadn't, but only suggested. So they defaulted to umpire's call. And then it felt to me like the next replay after the decision was made was actually the definitive replay where it didn't get anywhere near his boot.
How does that happen, Joe?
You don't want to get everything sorted in one week. Where would we go? I just want to debate umpire dissent with you.
Yeah.
So the Callum Wilkie one, this is sort of the role. This was this absolute starting point.
Yeah.
Adam Tomlinson preseason game last year, it had been prescribed.
Mm-hmm.
What you can't do is you can't stand with the umpire, point him to the scoreboard and tell him he was wrong. It was just prescribed. It was as simple as, hey, you can't move on the mark. You just have to stand. You can't stand with the umpire pointed at the scoreboard. This is not new. This was actually the very starting point, Adam Tomlinson, and there it was yesterday. So I don't understand the bluing around it. Just don't do it.
What about the second one? Did you see the Jack
I would
Steele
think
one?
the second one was about what was said, not what we saw.
No, he didn't say anything. He just said, he just pointed like that. He just lifted it. He just raised his left arm to say, he didn't even mark it, umpire. And he paid 50. Jared, it's too touchy. It's too touchy.
So
And
we should give players more license to
it wasn't
be dissentful towards umpires.
Well, you got
Don't
to
you
work.
think it's worth it?
I do think it's worth it, right? My overarching opinion is to agree with you, really. But can we just the little slight raise of, oh man, for that to be 50 and a goal in a 7-goal versus 8 goals or 10-goal game is too fine a line. We're a big business, Jared.
The Wilkie one was as clear as
Wilkie's a 50,
Clayton Oliver
right?
kicking the ball into the stand. They
Wilk-
forgot the rule.
I'm with you on the Wilkie one, right? He raised his arm and he basically screamed at the umpire 5 times.
That's the only concession I wanted.
The other one where he just says, "Oh, come on, that's not 50. Never has been, never should be. Can we have a level of tolerance that's common sense?"
Yeah. But let's put, as a starting point, let's just put on the players. So let's just get back to players were disputing decisions all weekend, visibly, and then that sort of was the archetypal one, the Wilkie one. So it's
yeah.
on the players a little bit. Hey,
Yeah.
we got to a nice point last year. Let's just re-establish ourselves at that point.
I think the St Kilda players had been more than patient with the umpiring yesterday, Jared.
I thought, broadly speaking, the umpiring was quite good across the week.
Very broadly.
Yeah.
But in that specific game, they had a 15-minute window that was awful.
That ran against them.
Oh,
There was
ran
a Port- there was
against
a
them.
period against.
It's like those
for Port
salmon,
Adelaide that
the
was running
salmon
against
going
them.
upstream.
I want to do the seedings properly, but you're desperate to get a little bit in Essendon Hawthorn.
Yeah, well, Essendon, we're going to judge them more next week. Gold Coast Suns, that becomes a big game now, and they did what they had to do on the weekend. Happy for them. The Hawthorn discussion's a good one. I don't think we can judge Hawthorn over the next 18 months in any meaningful way because they're going to be poor by design. So I'm just having a quick think of when we will start looking at them properly. It won't be the 2024 Olympics in Paris. It might even be the 2028 Olympics
2028 Olympics, that's a long way away.
in LA. So LA Mitchell, we're gonna have to buy some time here, Jared.
Molly
They're
O'Callaghan's
miles away.
career, who's an 18-year-old swimmer who I think's got the biggest upside, she might be retired by LA.
Molly and Sam's going to be known by then, Jared.
Okay.
2028.
SEN Survivor, we started with 8,500 players. Round one left us with 4,500. So
Oh.
Fremantle knocked over nearly half the field.
Is Sellers in?
Sellers is in, North Melbourne. God bless him.
Can't come in and win.
Seedings for Tyre Power, store-wide super sale. You can do this how there are no rules. You can do your seedings however you like. I've gone on what the performances that I saw. What have you done it for?
I've bought the Port Adelaide Power up the chart. That's a powerful performance. They played with real dare, real energy, with corridor, youth going crazy. I didn't even have him at 8 at the start of the year, but after one round, they've spiked.
Yep, I'm the same. Their performance is absolutely worthy of place in the seedings. They're at 4. 3?
Sydney, love what they're doing with this young group, and another 20 games' time might just be enough for them. You know, humbled in the grand final, look to have bounced. Boys becoming men. Look at the physiques of these guys and compare them to last year. They're going to be thereabouts again, Jared.
Geelong at 3 for me. Unperturbed. That was the highest quality round one game I've seen in many a year. 2?
Wow. Geelong, you're rusted on. 2, Melbourne. Just Melbourne being Melbourne. Bashed teams to within inch of their lives, and you know the little man Cozzy forward of centre looked terrific. They looked to play with more dare, more go forward, more corridor, and still maintain their back six with integrity. Even though they didn't have Stephen May, they didn't have Bailey Fridge, they didn't have Jack Viney. There's so much missing from that team, but they still looked exactly the same.
2, Collingwood, just pure exhilaration. 1?
Pies, Jared. I want you to get on board.
Yeah.
You're on board.
Oh, I'm with you. I've got Melbourne at 1 because I think their system is supreme.
No, won't be long before you've got the Pies at 1. I'll give it 4 weeks before you've got them at 1. We love what the modern day Malcolm Blight is doing.
It's a good high end, that's for sure.
Phew, that was a good round 1, wasn't it?
Oh, it could have gone for another hour. People screaming out for their team that didn't get referenced, which I totally get.